about alternative living situations and why I didn't consider that before moving out here and into a fixer-upper where I have so many repairs to do and I'm spending so much of my free time working on my house. Well, it's not that I haven't considered alternatives. In fact, in my last location, I built a tiny house, and I was really inspired by some of the videos that I've seen here on YouTube about people who are into minimalism and living with less and being in smaller spaces and being more sustainable. It was a very attractive lifestyle for me, but I found when I was in that situation, I guess I wasn't forced to live in my tiny house, and maybe it would have been different if I was, but I had another structure or a manufactured house that was about 800 square feet, and it was fairly comfortable, and I found out that I was spending most of my time in the manufactured house and not in the tiny house. And I was using the tiny house mostly as a studio to take photographs and for some of my hobbies. I was selling antiques, and I was storing some of them in the tiny house, and I was taking pictures of them in the tiny house so I could show my collection online and that sort of thing. So it quickly became filled up with my hobby, and it was okay to live in. I had worked on the plumbing myself, so I had hot and cold running water. I had an outdoor shower, so I was able to take a hot shower. I had a nice eco-temp water heater that was an on-demand water heater, and it smelled really nice inside. It was all made of cedar, and my partner and I had worked on the interior and done a lot of things. Like we designed a ceiling that was made of patchwork fabric that was really cool looking, and we finished the walls, the cedar walls. We sanded them and made them look really nice with teak oil and that sort of thing, and we put the floors in. We had bamboo wood floors, and it looked really nice inside, but I don't know, I just didn't end up living in it full time. And I have had an RV. In fact, I still have an RV now, and I moved down here with it, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't want to live in an RV, because I've experienced some pretty hairy things on the road. That's something that you need to think about before thinking about moving into an RV full-time or even part-time, because if you don't know a lot about the mechanics of your RV and how to fix it in case something goes wrong, both the interior moving parts and the truck portion. I had a P30, and I've had many problems on the road. Almost every trip I've taken, I've had to deal with some kind of problem. When I bought it, it was, you know, an older RV, but it was in really good condition. I bought it from an elderly man who kept it in the garage for most of its life, and he was just selling it because his wife had passed away and he didn't feel like traveling in it anymore. Maybe it, you know, brought up memories and he didn't want to deal with that. I don't know, but it was in really pretty good condition, but I still ended up sinking a couple of $1,000s into it right away, doing something, replacing some things that needed to be replaced. And there were a couple of really hairy experiences, especially moving down here. A couple that stand out in particular. I was on a high mountain road, curving mountain road, and I heard something underneath the carriage of the RV, and it didn't sound right. I knew something was terribly wrong. So I notified my travel partner. This was a friend who was helping me out with the move after my partner passed away. And we didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of things, especially traveling long distances. I tend to like to make a lot of stops and comfort stops and that sort of thing, and he's the type of person that just likes to drive straight through all night long. I don't like to, I like to sleep during the nighttime and drive during the daytime. But anyway, he really thought I was exaggerating when I pulled off to the side and said something was wrong. He was following me in his vehicle. So if you have a travel partner or considering a travel partner, make sure it's someone that you've done some smaller trips with, and you know how you get along with them on the road before you make any big decisions about taking any big trips with them. But anyway, we were on this desolate mountain road, and I had to use one of those emergency roadside phones, the solar powered ones, because I didn't have any cell service. So I called AAA, and they took 4.5 hours to get there. It was starting to get dark when I pulled off to the side, and it was dark for most of the time that we were waiting for the tow truck driver. And it was scary. I had pulled well off to the side, but I was worried that cars driving by would run into us, even though I had the lights turned off, and we were visible from the road, but we weren't really attracting people that might swerve off to the side. It still was pretty scary. I had all my animals with me that of course needed to go out and go to the bathroom and that sort of thing. So when the tow truck finally got there, they gave us two options. One, he could drive us into town to the nearest Walmart so we could stay there overnight and look for a mechanic in the morning. And the other one was that he would drive us several hundred miles out of our way to a mechanic that he knew about that could deal with our problem. And that would be several $100s. So I chose to be towed to Walmart because my family actually owned some property in the area, and I knew if we couldn't find a mechanic right away that we could stay there and park overnight. So of course in the morning, after spending the night at Walmart, which was not really a very nice Walmart, I'll have to add, we couldn't find a mechanic that could work on the RV because it was a Saturday. So I drove the RV. It was still drivable. I drove it to the cabin and was able to park it. It was a tight squeeze, but I was able to get in there, and the neighbors across the street were nice enough to let me run an extension cord across the dirt road so I could have electricity, and a hose so I could have running water. But it was about 106 degrees that weekend, and I literally was so ill I thought I had a heat stroke. I have a composting toilet in the RV because I don't like to deal with emptying the black water tank. And all the wood chips in the world, or the cedar chips in the world, aren't going to make a composting toilet smell like roses in 106 degree heat. And because there wasn't enough power to run the air conditioner, we were just really suffering, especially the dogs with their heavy coats. And because I was moving, I had a lot of my birds with me. I didn't have as many as I have now, but I had quite a few, and they were suffering as well in the heat. even though I had little waiting pools so that they could cool off and that sort of thing. It was pretty miserable, and we finally found a mobile mechanic who could help us. There was a plate underneath the engine compartment that had slipped out, and my friend couldn't get it back into place and bolted in without having something to drill a hole with. It had to be a fairly large hole, and the mechanic was able to do that so we could get the plate back into place. But the whole rest of the trip, I was worried, because it was kind of a makeshift solution, that the plate would fall out again and then I'd be stuck again, or even worse, on a high mountain road that would go over a cliff or something like that. So it was really stressful. And if you're someone who has a lot of anxiety about stuff like that, you may want to consider that before you decide to live in an RV part-time or even full-time. It's probably not the lifestyle for someone who's nervous or, gets anxious about things like that. Another thing that happened that trip was that we were again on a mountain road, or a road over steep cliffs over the coastline. We were on the Oregon coast, and the RV was feeling really top heavy, more than it normally does. And when we were going around the corners, it actually felt like it was going to roll over. It was so top heavy. So I knew something was wrong. I had just gotten new tires and a fairly large tire chain, and it didn't feel right. So again, I notified my travel partner who was following me, and we pulled off to the side and decided that we would take it into a local Les Schwab. Luckily, it's a chain, so if you do have a problem, you can always bring it into one of their locations and have them take a look at it. And sure enough, when we brought it in, we found out that the tires were out of alignment. So when they installed them originally, the new tires that I had installed especially for the trip, that they weren't in alignment, or they weren't able to put them in perfect alignment. So they fixed that problem, and we were back on the road again. But I kept thinking, like, what if there were older tires, or there were no Les Schwabs around? What would have happened? When you have an RV, your mechanical parts are attached to your accommodations, your living situation. So if you need to bring your RV in to be looked at by a mechanic, or to be worked on, and maybe even wait for parts, you won't have a place to live or stay. If you're not planning on that expense of a hotel, that can be a problem. If you don't have a reservation and it's the summer or holiday period, or you have dogs, that can be a big problem. I had another time when the air conditioning went out, and I had to bring it into an RV specialist and have him work on it. And it wasn't an area where a lot of people have RVs, so it took me a while to find him, and he took several days to work on it. And luckily, I had a friend where I could stay, but I, didn't have all my stuff with me. They were in the RV, and I didn't think to grab all that stuff when I was dropping the RV off, or I didn't even know that I'd have to leave it there for several days. So it was a very uncomfortable situation. And when you're on the road, you have to, if you break down and you don't know how to work on your RV or your car or wherever you're living out of, you have to trust a mechanic that you don't know, a strange mechanic. And of course everyone knows that women can be taken advantage of fairly badly, you know. It can be really expensive. And I have been taken advantage of, especially with the RV. One time I brought it in for a safety check, and I have the oil change and all that before a big trip. And previous to that was a time when I had the air conditioning fully serviced for almost a couple of $1,000s. And I knew it was, sorry, July, so we may have a couple of fireworks going on. Just a second. So where were we? Anyway, the RV situation and the mechanic. So in the guy in the shop, or the shop manager, that the belt on the air conditioner was missing. And I thought, well, how can that be? I just had it serviced. And the reason I knew something was up with this mechanic was because I had brought my truck in the year before we worked on, and it was the same shop manager but another location, and he said that the air conditioner was working, and I knew for a fact that the air conditioning was working. I had not had a problem with it, so I think that as a matter of course, if a woman came in, they may have just removed the belt to the air conditioner and told her that the air conditioning isn't working. So that can be a real problem. If you're not into maintaining your vehicle on the road, or if you don't have a lot of the tools that are required, I've ended up getting quite a few tools or having to replace them when I didn't remember to bring them. That's a consideration. Being accepted in a place where RVs are not really kosher, or that people don't like the idea of people living out of their vehicles, can be a problem. When my partner had a heart attack, I needed to go down to California and help him out. And I brought my RV and my dogs, and I wasn't able to park in his RV spot. He lived in a tract home that had, you know, RV space and that sort of thing. But it was blocked by someone who had left a vehicle there. So I had to park the RV in his yard, and the neighbors didn't like that. It wasn't, you know, a really exclusive neighborhood or anything like that, but they just didn't like the idea of somebody being parked there with an RV. I think there was maybe one other RV in the entire neighborhood, and they were just storing their RV in their RV space. There was no one trying to live there, even, you know, part-time. So I ended up bringing a moving van down there so that I could spend several months. And the neighbors actually reported the moving van being parked in front of the house. So I got a ticket to move the van in 72 hours, which of course I wasn't going to leave it there for 72 hours. Nobody leaves a moving van for that long, because you need to bring it back to the place where you've rented it. Otherwise it costs you a lot of money. But the neighbors were so petty that they did that. And I think the reason why was because they were so upset or worried that I would leave the RV in the yard that, you know, they wanted to make sure that I got the message. And a lot of times, if you have an older RV, which I do, but it's in good shape and it's by no means a junker, you will not be accepted in many RV parks. Many RV parks have a requirement that your RV is 10 years old or younger. And I've even had a reservation before, and I've come out and they've told me that RVs older than 10 years old will not be accepted. Just a second, sorry. Okay, let's hope she stays quiet. The reason I have her inside is because it's the 4th of July, as I explained before, and I just don't want her having any problems out there. It is really hot this weekend. So anyway, we were talking about being accepted in an older RV in an RV park, and the age of your RV. A lot of times people will have vintage RVs, and for some reason those are accepted more than an older RV that may be just your vanilla RV Winnebago. That's what I have, like Sundowner. And they'll make an exception for them. So it's kind of unfair, but it is what it is. And I don't particularly like staying at Walmarts. They're very convenient if you only want to sleep for a couple of hours, but I like to stay in a national park, state park. I haven't stayed on BLM land, and I'm not the type that would go to a place like Quartzsite or Slab City. I just like my comfort too much for something like that. But you always have that option of staying at a Walmart in case you can't find an RV park that will accept you or that sort of thing. But do you really want to have to deal with that all the time? Do you really want the stress and anxiety of worrying like where you're going to spend the night? And also, if you have anything like a bad back or arthritis, which I have, it may take a lot out of you to do that much driving. If you're driving like 2 days a week or maybe even 2 days a month, it can really do a number on your back. I have like a 45-minute drive to and from the city to go in to buy supplies, and that, the next day I will be really sore from it. So I like to be able to move around a lot during the day. I like being able to stretch out and do yoga exercises or physical therapy exercises, and I like the idea of giving my animals a territory that they can call their own outside of my vehicle, so that they have a yard to run around in, and just that sense of permanence. And for me, I'd like to be connected to the land. I like the idea of having, like a vegetable garden, which I haven't really had much luck with yet here, but I'm hoping to do that. And I'm hoping, to have some kind of connection with the place where I live, develop some roots. Maybe I won't feel the same way in a couple of years. Maybe I won't have the chickens and ducks, which need, I need a permanent place to live in a few years. But right now, that's what I have. And I did have a lot of good times traveling with my late partner. In fact, I'll include some of those videos that we recorded when we were traveling around. We traveled up and down the coast, the West Coast, a lot, and we went to a lot of places that are like my favorite places on earth. Patrick's Point in Trinidad. That's one of my favorite places to camp out at. The Sierras, the Gold Lakes, and Lake Tahoe, and that sort of thing. But I don't have a travel partner now, or not someone I would consider traveling with long term. And I don't think I want to travel alone right now. I have my animals, of course, but I just don't want to deal with that struggle of, driving all night, or trying to find a place to park, or parking the big RV and backing it out when you can't turn around. You may, that's another thing that really stresses me out about RV travel, is driving down a narrow road and not being able to turn around, and then having to have someone help me, make a, 1,000-point turn to get turned around so I can get out of, what I've gotten into. Of course, if you're in like an SUV or a truck, you can do that, or even a van, you can do that. I've had vans that I've traveled in, but I haven't really used them as a place to camp in, to sleep in. I've always brought a tent. I don't know. I suppose it's probably pretty comfortable, but I feel like if you're camping, it's nice to be outdoors and in a tent. Sleeping in a vehicle is I guess it's just not for me. And moving into this place, of course, I'm spending a lot of my free time working on it and doing a lot of repairs, and I don't have a lot of time to myself, but I feel like I will eventually. So that's why I've chosen this path. And if you want to follow along, please subscribe and click the little bell so you can be notified when I update or when I upload a new video. And if you like this sort of thing, please comment and press the like button. I'd like to hear your comments, and maybe if you have some suggestions for me, that would be great. So we'll see you next video.